Welcome to Inspiring Possible. I'm Christy Pennison, former stuck person turned therapist and dream consultant. Are you feeling stuck, overwhelmed, uncertain, or just need a little inspiration? Then I want to help you gain the clarity, confidence, and courage to create possibilities and live a life you love. Because folks, life's too short to be miserable. Welcome back, Inspiring Possible. It's something today. Listeners, we're so excited to have you back listening. I'm really excited because we've really started to re-engage by doing interviews with incredible people that will hopefully inspire you to maybe rethink or explore different possibilities for your life. And so I am very excited because I have Kim, and I did not ask you how to pronounce your last name.
It's okay.
But I butchered them all.
Right. Well, the correct pronunciation is Rogne. So if we want
I
to
would
be
have
fancy,
butchered that.
we could do Rogne. Let's be fancy. But no, it's Rogne. Thank you.
Rogne, okay. Kim Rogne. Okay, now what's cool about Kim is she is all the things, okay? Speaker, leadership trainer, which I appreciate leadership trainers, Kim, because I've been myself going through some leadership training recently and coaching, and it has been transformative to me. But she's also like a really badass boss woman as well. And today we're going to talk about, because I know that some of y'all that listen are these high achieving women, right? That often feel overwhelmed by all the hats that you have to wear. And guys, you can listen in too if you're a high achieving person and do all the things and have struggle. This will pertain to you as well. But really today we're speaking to how do you just dial back the overwhelmed feeling that you might feel by doing all the things. So I know I can't see you if you raise your hand, if you do all the things, but if that's you, just nod to yourself. That's me and keep listening. So Kim, tell me a little bit, because I'm really interested to hear a little bit about your story of how you even got to leading a multi-million-dollar real estate brokerage and now actually being able to help other people learn how to navigate all of the things. What got you here?
Okay. This is super fun. This is going to be so good, you guys. So where my journey started is, yes, I do come from the background of being in the real estate industry. First 15 years, I was in sales, 100% commission. And then the last 10 years, I was in broker management, and I did lead multimillion-dollar brokerages, hired all of the agents. The last brokerage that I left, I had 183, 100% commissioners.
Oh my
that could be
gosh.
that could be it's like leading a kindergarten class. And then I had 6 staff members. And so my job was to hold the P&L accountable to the investors, hire the staff, and teach the top agents to help them reach their goals.
I'm tired already just listening to that.
Yeah. So quite intense. So, but back in 2022 is when I started my business For the Love Of. And really what was the impetus to leading to that was, it was, 2 years prior to that, I was forced to slow down. I had a traumatic skiing accident out in Breckenridge, Colorado with my youngest daughter and groom of 27 years at that time. And I had fallen, and in normal sisterly fashion, my youngest daughter was like, Snapchat to her older sister, mom's down, ha ha ha. But it wasn't really ha 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 because mom did not get back up. Long story short, I left with a broken tibia, fibia, and a shattered ankle, and now have some beautiful rods and screws all in my leg and all of that.
For the love of skiing.
Yeah, for the love of skiing. But really what it turned out to be was for the love of slowdown.
Yeah.
And coming from being in an industry for the last 25 years where I really truly only knew how to operate in drama and chaos and just fast-paced, move all the time, solve the problems, come to me, all that kind of stuff, working very, very long hours, I really was doing some reflecting, and I was knocking on the door of us getting to the point where we were empty nesters. I was almost 50 at the time. And I thought to myself, well, what do I want to do with the second best half of my life? I truly believe I'll be here to 100. And I was like, well, what am I doing? And that's when I decided to pull the Band-Aid, sit down with my groom, and say, "Hey, honey, I have an idea." This is when we're forced to pour a glass of wine because he's
Yeah.
used to it. He's like, "Oh, no, now what?"
Another idea. Listen, okay, you too.
And, he's like, "Okay, great. Yeah, I totally support you. I know you've been on a high salary for the last 10 years, but yeah, sure. Pull the Band-Aid and go start a business with no guarantee." And that's what I did. And so in 2022, I started For the Love of. And this is where I am, my mission is that anytime in your space, whether you're listening right now or we're on a square together in Zoom or wherever we're at, or I'm speaking on stage, I just want to make sure that you are inspired and you are empowered and that you go ahead and take action. And with a special emphasis on who I coach and speak to are entrepreneurial solopreneur, 100% commissioner women and working moms because that's who I am. And I understand that we are just very unique and have our own challenges in itself. And so
Yeah.
that's what I do now.
Well, and I guess when this slowdown came, I'm sure it made you reflect, it sounds like a lot about your experience up to that point. Like you said, forced slowdown, which is not the kind that you
Yeah.
want, right? And I'm sure there was a lot of pain and rehabilitation and all that not fun stuff involved. But it sounds like for you, you kind of shifted to say, hey, this is who I'm feeling called to serve at this point. And what about your experience? What do you feel like you wish you would have known when you were more in the before you transitioned into helping other women? Because I'm sure that's what you help them learn how to do now. But what are the things that now you know that you wish you would have known
Mm.
then?
Oh, I love that question. So, when I did slow down, one of the things that I chose to do was really get to know myself. And so, I am a lifelong learner. And I have taken DISC and Enneagram and Strength Finders and am I an owl or eagle or whatever assessment, right? But I do remember in the past, I would brush past them like, okay, yeah, I know I'm a high D, move on. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
great, right? But if we read it about somebody else, we may take in the information and actually process it. So the very first thing I did is I processed it. I took in the information. I thought to myself, okay, what am I really good at? What fills my bucket? What gives me joy and also I can make money? And how could I go build that life for me? And if I were to, kind of like reflect back and think, okay, if somebody's in a phase of their life where they're also questioning if they're getting the pure, I would say, fulfillment and joy from their work, it doesn't have to be your purpose. I don't think your work has to be like your Mother Teresa, right? We don't all get to work in our life's purpose, but I do believe with work being where we spend the majority of our time, we should have enjoyment and fulfillment from it. And if I'm going to leave my babies, my family, I want to make sure it lights me up. And so I think for anybody who maybe is listening who's kind of questioning or struggling or they're going through a different season in their life, this is a great activity to do to create some clarity so that you can have direction on where you want to go next. And then it's not so hard if you really know what your natural strengths are.
What do you find is the biggest challenge for high achieving women who also wear many hats? Like to
Okay.
actually because I know that like and I even know for myself and it's even as much as I talk about different things on this show about reflection and things, I still know it is hard for me to do it.
Yeah.
Take the time to do it myself and I have to be very intentional and because it's like I'm used to doing so much, and I'm sure you can
Mm,
appreciate this too, that the just being and taking the time to reflect and be intentional about that reflection can really be challenging. So, where do you see women struggling to get to that point to actually say, maybe this isn't fulfilling? Like, what are the things that you would maybe give them to take the time to?
yeah, I love that so much. And you are correct. It's first of all slowing down, which we don't naturally do, and the world doesn't, you know, promote slowing down. Let's be honest, right? We've got our
Hmm.
technology at our fingertips all the time. It is getting introspective and trusting yourself without comparison. We can also get caught up in the comparison trap like, oh, well, she's doing that. Oh, she's making the cupcakes with the googly eyes and taking them to the kindergarten class. I'm an inadequate mom because I can only fit in, you know, buying paper plates. Like, who really cares, right? And
Yeah.
so I would say that and just owning who you are. And then the second thing for high achieving women, here's a really big one. Write this one down, ladies. Um, your worth as a mother, as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner is not in doing it all.
Mhm.
And somehow between the 1950s and today, when we're all about women empowerment and women being in the workforce and women being paid the same and having the same opportunities as men, which we know we're getting better at, somehow there was a disconnect between the, oh, I can have it all, meaning I have to do it all. And
That's right.
so one of the things I challenge my working moms a lot is one, what can you say no to, first off, without guilt? And what can you say no to without a story? Like if you get a text and somebody's like,
Oh,
hey
I
girl,
love that because we
yeah,
wanna explain.
yeah,
We
no,
wanna
no, no,
explain.
no. We
We
don't
don't
need
wanna
to
say
know.
no.
We don't need to know the dog is sick, the kids are sick, you got to do laundry, you got to go to the soccer game, and oh, by the way, this and that. No, we have to empower each other together that when we say no to each other, it's okay and we still love each other and we're still friends. We
Yeah.
just no is a full sentence. And then the second thing is also, too, whether you're married, you have a partner, or you have some form of support, is learning how to ask for help. I don't know. I believe men and women's brains think differently. And trust me, I've been working on this for 30 years with my spouse. But we just don't think the same. I've been
No,
trying.
we don't.
We just don't. And so accepting that I may be thinking about dinner while I'm taking a shower and taking the chicken out of the freezer because I'm thinking ahead. He's not. He never
Mhm.
does. But what I can do is ask him to take out the chicken, or I could ask him to pick up the XYZ ingredients, right? Or how about this? I'm packing for a vacation. My brain right away when we're packing for a vacation as a family is, what is this house going to look like when I get home? Because
Yeah,
I don't
'cause
want their
you don't want
garbage in the.
chaos. Yeah,
Yeah.
mhm.
No, 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 no. No, but nobody else is thinking that. But if I help plant the seed and I say, hey, listen, I'm still working on packing my luggage. I'm getting myself ready. Can you please empty the dishwasher? He would do it, but he wouldn't think about it. And so we can get resentful as women with our spouses or anybody in our life because they're not doing things, but that's
Or
on
they're not
us.
thinking ahead to do it, and you're over there being like, in my
Right.
mind, I already know you should do this, but I haven't asked you to do it, but I'm still expecting you to do it, or I'm mad that you're not doing it."
Right. Like just CEO your home. I call that CEO your home. Like if you were a CEO of a large business, you would be mad at your administrative assistant because they didn't replace the paper in the copier. You would go and you would ask them. So that's a lot of what I talk about too is like we are smart women. We are running multi-million-dollar businesses. We are solopreneurs that are building businesses from home with multiple streams of income. Whatever our job is, we are smart. So how do we take that and actually implement it at home?
Yeah. And well, and I think you hit on something that I loved how you like said, write this down, highlight, put it on the wall somewhere so you can because I really do. I was having this conversation with actually a mentor of mine, who she's kind of at the point where she's moving into retirement and has exited. She's still doing some in the business world, but she's this high performing, badass entrepreneurial woman who for years has really grown and led a successful business and then had those multiple roles of mom and now grandma. And we were talking about this your worth is not in doing it all. And also the fact that in our minds, we feel like we should do it all
Mm.
and I think it does come from, like you said, here was women's role. Here's how culturally women's role has changed. And now just because we can have it all doesn't mean that we should do it all. And how can you switch that mindset? And she told me, she said, Christy, she said, I go and I sit in these rooms with men who are leading these very successful organizations, tons of revenue. They're managing all these things. And she said, you know what I realized is they never thought about, should I have an executive assistant or should I have somebody run around and go get my dry cleaning, or do I have these roles that support me? Like they naturally have, and then they have maybe a partner at home that's taking care of the house, or, working with the kids, even if that is a working mom too. And she's like, and they never think twice about getting help, asking for help, you know?
Wow.
She said
Such
they
a good
just they
observation.
prioritize it. And she said, but us as women, especially when you get to roles where you have a lot of responsibilities and you wear a lot of hats,
Mhm.
because we may have done it all from the beginning doesn't mean that we still should when we have the
Mm.
ability to get help. And I know for me as even a therapist, right? My role historically has been to help people. And I
Yeah.
always tell people, if you're struggling, ask for help. But I find it is those people that are the high achievers, the doers of the world, that have the hardest time also accepting help for themselves, or like you said, learning how to do this in their home where you have these supports and you just assume that everybody should know what they're supposed to be doing, you know? Even your children, right? If they have roles.
Yeah.
And when it may just require a simple ask, and then
Right.
also figuring out what do you need to do for yourself and what else needs to be delegated to somebody else, or get you receive
Mhm.
support for someone else in doing that. Yeah.
Yes, yes, for sure. And the world has made it easier now, right? So my kids are 21 and 23. They're in that semi-adulting age. Oh my gosh. Sidebar funny. My 23-year-old admitted the other day that she has not bought a roll of toilet paper yet she moved out 6 months ago when she graduated college. I was
Has she
like,
been taking it
girlfriend,
from your house?
yeah. I'm like, that's why I call it semi-adulting. Hilarious. So
Like, I'm just
anyway,
going to mom's house to shop, okay? Let me just get what I need, all my essential
I was like,
items, and
"You may not have wanted to tell me that, but okay, good for you on your budgeting." Okay. Anyway, but yes, it is much easier. There's a lot of resources that are out there that are very different. When I was raising my kids, like we didn't have Blue Apron delivered at our door. There was no DoorDash. There were none of those things. Like, honestly, it is a true blessing, even just podcasts. Even being able to have the community around you in a virtual way and learn in a virtual way, like what we're doing right now, Christy, like what you are doing is such a gift. It is a gift. And I know people who run podcasts it's not like you're making $1 million off of the podcast. You're doing this because this is in your heart of hearts. But it's tapping into those resources then, right? It's
Yeah.
like, okay, how do I tap into these things so that I understand that I need to have the support around me? Again, just like I would do if I was running a business.
Yeah, well, and
So,
this goes back to this worthy part too, right? Like, or the worth and the worthy and the like you are one that you give support to so many. I think women often are the supporters of the world, like right from their
mm,
families to the people that they're leading. But you can get support too, right? And so whether that's in doing a role that will help relieve some of your responsibilities, whether it's, being able to support to get support from even like your kids, like they can do stuff
oh,
sometimes to
don't even
support
get me
you.
started about that system. I
Mhm.
had my kids doing their laundry by the time they were 7, packing their lunches, shared Google Calendar. Like, I don't know, look on the Google Calendar. Can you go to that birthday party? Like, that's a whole
Yeah.
nother system in itself that now as they're grown, these are lifelong lessons that,
Yeah.
when they went to college, as much as they may have been whining about doing some of the things they did, they now thank us for it. And I
Yeah.
interviewed them. So when I was preparing my course for working moms, I was like, okay, let me ask my girls, like, what my perception is, what is their perception, right? And so like I interviewed them and I'm like, okay, well, what about this? What did you think about that? What did you think about the whiteboard that you had to write on every week with the schedule? What did you think about when you were little and we actually put the pictures on the wall of what you needed to pack in your backpack? And what did you think about laundry? And what did you think about when we sent you in the grocery store with the debit card? All these CEO systems that I put in place. And they were like thankful. And it was so
Yeah.
cool to have that conversation. The one thing they did suggest, here's a little takeaway, especially if you are a mom right now where your kids are in school. The most overwhelming thing about kids in school and activities are the email and now on the apps. So most of the communication that we did was over email, but the amount of communication that you get on dates, activities, deadlines, and all this stuff, right? And so one of my daughters said, well, I will tell you, Mom, one of the things I would have changed is I would have created one email that was a family email. And so let's just say it was rogneyfamilyemail@gmail.com. That was the email that you used for all of the school registration, all of the activity registration, and that was it. And everything would go to that email because I used to have my kids manage email, but the way that I used to manage it was I would forward the school emails I got and I would say, go read this and go put on the calendar what you want to attend. That's called leverage. I'm teaching them how to use a shared Google Calendar and how to make decisions on what they do with their time. But apparently I missed some things. So my daughter was like, and you would sometimes forget to forward the email. So that was her.
Yeah, but
So,
that's really smart, and it is like, how do you create like you said, whenever you're in a business, and especially leading one, you're trying to always evaluate our systems. Is this system effective? Is it helping us
yep,
reach our end goal or deliver the outcomes that we wanna be able to deliver to the people that we serve? And it is also trying to it sounds like for what you do is help moms start to think about in the same way, and that actually streamlining of the communication into one place is a brilliant idea because I will say, I mean, moms are inundated with all kinds of things, right?
insane.
Like you said, the school activities to
Yeah.
the school reports to the play dates to all kinds of things. So
So it
one
makes
family
me think
meal.
of this quote. So I have these cards where I write quotes, these
Oh, I love
index
that.
cards, and it makes me think of this. And I'm sure James Clear, Atomic Habits, like one of the best books ever to read like every year, right? You do not rise to the level of your goals, and that's personally and professionally. You fall to the level of your systems.
Mhm.
And so whenever I'm feeling stressed, overwhelmed, whether it's in my business, my personal life, my financial life, my spouse life, all of the circles of our lives that make us whole people because we're not robots, they all connect. I think to myself, okay, how can I systematize this? And not that it has to be that regimented, and I'm not like an engineer by trade or anything, but it's like, how do I systematize remembering people's birthdays? How do I systematize my alone time, right? Like, how do I systematize that? All of these things that we're talking about in our life so that we can have high achieving lives and feel the enjoyment and the joy, feel it. And I don't
Yeah.
like when we're talking about high performance living, that is the ongoing feeling of full engagement and joy. And we don't always feel because we're doing all the time like a gerbil on the wheel.
Well, and let's talk about that. I mean, I think also and I don't know about you, but if you're not feeling and are allowing yourself to feel, then you start to check out in different ways.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I'm going to binge watch this show or I'm going to
Yeah.
go escape. And then you get frustrated because there might have been things you wanted to intentionally do at that time that was maybe different, but you're really, because you're trying to avoid the feeling, we start engaging in some of these systems or behaviors that may not always be, it's not that they're bad, but it may not always be
Yeah.
supporting us in our,
Correct.
whether it be restoration or, rejuvenation or whatever we need. And let me ask you this, Kim. I mean, what is the pervasive feeling that when you start to work with people, and especially these women, that you hear? Like, what are the words that you hear that people mainly are feeling by the time they get to you?
Mm. I hear the word guilt a lot, right? Like when I'm at work, I feel guilty that I'm not at home. When I'm at home, I feel guilty that I'm not working. So I do tend to hear that. I hear the word overwhelm. And overwhelm really is a feeling and a mindset. And so we talk through a lot of what can we do when we feel overwhelmed, right? Do we first need to do like a brain dump, get all the stuff off our brain, right? That's taking our mind share energy. And then plan. What is one thing I can chunk off? I also hear, you know, how old are your kids again,
Oh, I
Christy?
just have one, and she's a
One.
teenager, 16.
Oh,
Yes.
lucky you.
Yeah.
We'll
You had
see.
girls, so you know how
Yeah,
the phase goes.
fun times, right? But even just, thinking about the phases, right? It's a very different phase when they're little and they need us in a different way between the ages of 0 and 5. And then there's, 6 to 12 and now you're in the teenage years. It's also understanding. I hear a lot of words of comparison or,
Mhm.
oh, I wish I could do this or I wish I could do that. And I'm like, but
Or this
wait a
mom does that and I'm not
yeah.
doing this. Yeah.
And I'm like, but wait a second. First of all, when your child was 2, you're not the same person now that they're 13 and they're not the same person. And so it's really taking a moment to realize, and I think even your last interview, amazing interview that you had, you guys talked about this a little bit, but understanding that you're in different seasons and phases. And we grow and we change just like we do in any relationship. We're humans. Like I think our cells regenerate themselves every 7 years or so. I don't even know. Something
Yeah, I
like
don't I
that.
don't know the science behind it, but yes, we're different. And I mean
Yes.
if you're exactly the same as you were
Right.
15 years ago, that's a whole nother conversation we need to have.
Right.
No
So
judgment, but that's another conversation.
yes. And so it's also just taking a step back and asking ourselves, what can I do versus what should I do? I was just talking to a potential client. She has a 4-month-old and it's her first baby. And her husband works third shift as an engineer. And she was frustrated. And I'm like, and for whatever reason, she thought, and she runs her business out of her home and she thought she'd still be able to do the same thing. Right? And I was like, I just wanted to like hug her and squeeze her and just hold her beautiful little face and just, you know, we had talked through like, it's not going to be the same. And if anybody told you it is, that's
They
wrong.
lie.
Right? Or if you've
They
seen
lie.
that on social
Yeah.
media, it's not. And so we just set little mini goals. We're like, you're 100% at home right now. Like your business is not going to look the same. So let's just pick one thing each day that you can do and give yourself grace because you
Yeah.
probably need to take a nap. And it's all of those types of things that I wish somebody took me under their wing when I was a young mom and allowed me to set the goals that were based on the phase of my life that I'm in at the moment.
Yeah. Well, and it is, we only have so many hours in a day, right? There's no, and unfortunately, we haven't gotten to the point, and I don't think I would actually want this to happen where we can duplicate ourselves. I mean, we can help, but we can't like literally clone ourselves or anything like
Well,
that.
maybe if I'm the real one on the beach and the other one's at home cleaning, I'm good with that.
So you're like, if the other one is having to do all the grunt work and I get
Yeah.
to live my best life, then that may
Yeah.
be okay. But, I mean, we haven't, and that's a whole nother conundrum. But, anyways, but like that is not our reality, right? It's one
Yeah.
person. And, it is hard to reshape, like we talked about in that interview, the last interview, your identity, because a lot of times I do think women or even men, we shape a lot of our
Mhm.
identity by the roles we're in, by maybe the positions we have or how we view ourselves. And when you're in those phases of transition, you really have to figure out who you are at that stage.
Mhm.
And some of that's letting go. And like you said, just because you can always shouldn't be you should, and just because you should
Yeah.
shouldn't be you can. So it's kind of like, what can you do in this season and what's most important, because as you know, I mean, your kids are now in their early 20s.
Mhm.
You can't turn back the clock and go back to
Mm.
when they were the cute little babies or,
Mhm.
the cute, elementary age looking at the world and trying to figure things out, all of those phases will pass, but what is it that's most important? And how can you get the support so that you can feel good about where you're at in life,
Mhm.
you know?
Yes. So true.
And that feeling you talked about, like you said, when people are juggling and they're not saying, okay, this ball can drop or this one I can keep in the air, you can start to miss out on life because you're so stressed.
Yes. Well, and just the world you work in. And I think I was reading a recent stat somewhere 9 out of 10 women experience some sort of, and this may be hormonal too, let's be honest, we got that
Yes.
extra
Well, and
layer
that you
going
got that
for
whole
us.
other layer of things you got to deal with, hormones.
Some sort of, mental battle. And then somewhere around 43% of women have high stress levels and anxiety, right? And so some sort of, stat like that, right? That's huge. That's huge, right? And here we are on this gift they call Earth, and we're in life. And how can we walk around with the right sort of expectations of ourselves and others so that we can, have the confidence that we're living our best for the love of life? That's why I have for the love of. You get to fill in the blank. Is it for the love of being a great mama? For the love of
I
running
love
an
it.
amazing business? And so, yeah. And it's hard. I mean, I'm not going to pretend like it's easy. Like, it's hard to live an intentional life. It has to be a conscious decision.
And well, like you said, and evaluating, I can think about just sharing my stuff here, folks. Okay, in my therapy session this week for my own therapist. Okay, we were actually talking about like expectations and expectations of self, and really
Yeah.
how to evaluate that. And I think when you are high performing or a high achiever, or you're doing all the things, um, or you're even a high functioning mama. I mean, fill in the blank, high, whatever. Okay. Then a lot of times you have expectations of yourself or how things should go that
Mm.
nobody else knows about.
Yeah, it's so
If it
true.
doesn't get done, nothing's happening, you know what I mean? Like, and so it is having those conversations, and like you said, it's not easy, but it's worth it if you
Yeah.
can do the work to really be able to clarify, like you were saying earlier, where you wanna go, why it's important, what's most important to you in this season, because I think you can save yourself a lot of overwhelm that is a lot of times self-imposed,
Yeah,
right? I mean, sometimes it is the
totally.
expectations you feel others have of you, but sometimes that expectation really is coming from self more than it comes from anybody else.
Yeah. So true.
Yeah,
So true.
yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you help women? Is there any advice you would give to them, that somebody right now that has a lot of expectations of themselves, how to maybe
Yeah.
shed some of those off or
Shed some of
reevaluate
that.
some of those?
Yeah. I definitely first would take a moment to be introspective. I think we kind of mentioned that, right? And really ask yourself, what do I want for right now? Right?
Ooh,
What do I want and what can I, what makes sense? I would say that's a great first step. And we know that when we put pen to paper, our thoughts and our wiring in our brain reacts differently. So it's putting that pen to paper. And then it's looking at that and asking ourselves. I ask the question a lot when we're visiting all 10 areas of our life, whether it's mental or physical or financial or spiritual. I ask the question of, okay, great. Now that you've written this down, if we go look at, we'll just say our physical health. And let's say when I ask the questions around your physical health on a scale of 1 to 10, you rank it a 7. I'll ask the question is of what is one thing, just one thing that you can do to move from a 7 to a 7.5 that you could start doing right now. And then we kind of break it down because we're not looking to go from a 7 to a 10 overnight. We're just looking to do something really small, right? To have some momentum to potentially improve that part of our life. And that's what we do. So we look at all 10. In fact, I can even give all 10 because people can write these down. You can ask yourself these questions. So we talk about the areas of our physical health, our emotional mindset health, our family, our friends and social circle, our spouse or partner. You have one. You, right? Like, what do you need? Our mission work, finances, adventures and hobby, and spirituality. And so if you were to rank each of those on a scale of 1 to 10, where you feel you are right now, right? And then you don't have to be working on all those areas at once,
yeah.
but it's like, oh, okay, that'd be crazy talk here, people. But like, this month, maybe I really want to concentrate on my adventure and hobby. And I'm just like, okay, one thing that I want to do is just like once this week for me, an adventure. It doesn't have to mean you're jumping off mountains or out of a plane, but maybe an adventure for you is just getting back to walking in nature. Like, we don't need to make it huge, but like, can I at least schedule that time? And
Mhm.
that's what we do together.
Okay. Yeah. And how can I commit to myself? Well, I know that you are about to launch a course, and you
hmm
also have maybe something that people can reflect on. So tell us a little bit more about what you're working on right now and how that's going to support the women that you serve.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. Well, first of all, you can just plainly go to kimrogne.com, KIMROG as in girl, NE. and there's lots of free downloads there. And then I will send any working moms to flowworkingmoms.com, FLO, like for love of, flowworkingmoms.com. And you will get a free download that is from my For the Love of Self journal. And it actually gives you the journal entries that you can do at the beginning of the week, your daily mindset, and then your reflection at the end of the week. And so just go get that. You don't need to buy the journal. You can just get the download and do it in your own notebook. And then once you visit my kimrogne.com, I do have a 6-week course that I am launching here at the end of April that is specifically for working moms. So if you're a working mom and you're listening right now and some of these things resonated with you, like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what direction to take. What's the CEO system? And you want some tools to help you in your life so you can live your best for the love of life, that you might want to check that out.
Okay, awesome. Well, we'll definitely make sure to link it up so that way y'all can find those things and definitely check it out because, one of the things you said is at some point, if you are not feeling, and not that you're always going to feel great about life, but if you're not feeling like you are living in intention with your and most aligned life, it is just giving yourself permission to take care of you and be able to give yourself the gift of space and reflection. And as we're talking, one thing that I always remind myself is that sometimes it's hard for me to craft out these intentional reflection times for myself. But if there's a course or there's a workbook or there's something that helps guide me through those intentional reflections, or somebody that helps me along the path to really dial in and think about things, you can really get a lot more clarity about where you want to be. And
Yeah.
if you have trouble doing it yourself, get help. Ask for help. That's what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Ask for help and get someone to help you along this path because it really can be a game changer. And I think I've shared on here, I mean, there are so many people that are supporting me at any time.
Mm,
And so I try to peel back behind the curtain from whether it be my own personal therapist or, I've had a leadership coach that's helped me in this recent season, or it's been a business mentor, or sometimes it's been a spiritual mentor in those different areas, or in the physical health department. It could be a coach that leads me through different exercises or how to
mm.
reprioritize. And
So true.
I've learned that for me, saying I'm going to do it myself normally falls flat because I will prioritize
100%
the
agree.
the work or the kids or, whatever it is, those things will tend to take priority. And so if I want to be intentional, I know that I have to have help sometimes to follow through in that. But it has been the biggest game changer for me to create, and it almost sounds like for you too, to create and live a life that you really feel aligned with. It doesn't mean that there's not challenges, but that ultimately you're feeling good about where you are, what you're doing, and where you're going. So,
Yeah, I love that advice, Christy. Like, I don't ever want to be the smartest person in the room. And so, if I can, in all those areas of my life, if I can find people that are smarter than me, that's where I want to be.
that's where
And
you
not,
want to be.
I don't
Well,
want to
and
be
just
doing it on myself by
that
myself.
thinks differently than you, right? Like I've
Yes.
had people that have given me perspective that I'm like, I would have never thought of that, or I would have
Yeah.
never thought about that as an issue. I would have never thought to think about that in my life that way. I'll never forget before I actually even went into business for myself as well. I had a mentor that we would go to lunch every now and then, and I was working in this job, and I was working in a leadership role, but he would hear my frustration, my stress, my overwhelm, my guilt, all those things we just talked about. And I remember one day he looked at me and it didn't sink in till months later. But he said, Christy, why are you working so hard for somebody else's dream? And that
So,
question sat with me, maybe not initially. At first, I think I was a little defensive, like, what are you talking about? Because I'm helping these people. But it eventually led me to that space of, like you said, that introspection, that self-discovery, that, okay, it doesn't mean that what was not good, but what now, And I think sometimes in our lives, we have to get to those spaces where we say, okay, I respect the journey that was, but where I want now. And it sounds like your accident really slowed you down to say, okay, it doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy that season that may have been chaotic and I was on all the time. But in this next season, what is it that I want to
yeah.
do now? And what is I like how you said mission work that I
Yes.
feel called to in this,
Yeah.
next half of life.
So true. Good
Yeah.
stuff.
So, Kim, if you were to give younger you a piece of advice, and you can pick what season of younger you want to go back to, or a word of encouragement, what is something that you wishes that you could gift your younger self?
Ooh, that's so good. I'm going to go back to when my kids were in school. So we'll just start elementary age. And again, it was a different time. So there weren't podcasts and all of these things that we can do to connect and create community. I did not have a community. I felt very lonely because I was a working mom. I happened to be in an area where nothing wrong with being a stay at home mom, right? What a blessing if you can do that. And that is a full time CEO job. But
Yes.
that wasn't what I was
That
doing.
wasn't your reality. Yeah.
That wasn't my reality. And so, if there's anybody out there who right now feels a little lonely because you're running a business, you're working, and you want to also be a great mom and continue to have a healthy marriage, find somebody that you can connect with and have mentorship with, right? Either find somebody who's been married longer than you. How are they doing it? Or find somebody who's also running a business. And like I said, it's easier now today than it was then. But I didn't have a lot of friends and I felt very lonely. Not that I didn't have friends in the workplace, but it would have been super cool now that my kids are out of the house if I had somebody along the way as they grew up that now we were still connected and we could come back together. And so I that's the advice I would give myself is go find somebody because there probably was somebody out there. I just didn't take the
Yeah.
time to find them.
Well, and I love that you said this because I know this wasn't necessarily the thread of our conversation, but I would say that now we do have these opportunities to connect a lot
Yeah.
more quickly than we used to have. But I do find that people are struggling to find that authentic community where you do have people. And if that is you and you are feeling alone and isolated, which I think is a very common thing to feel, if you haven't had the opportunity or you live in a place that maybe there's not that automatic community, I love how you said it's to try to go find somebody. And that's another
Mhm.
thing that sometimes we have to add to our list. But I do think for women, especially, and I think for men too, having those intentional relationships will make the journey a lot more rewarding and less isolating. And having those people just call up and be like, hey, you know what it feels like to be a working mom and also have my child in elementary age or have my child go through
Mhm.
this. Somebody that has that lived experience with you can really be a game changer, I'll say, for your mental health, honestly,
Absolutely.
to do the journey. Because when you're feeling isolated, it really is hard to shift those thoughts of that expectation
Mhm.
about yourself or get out of that
Right.
comparison trap and all those things. So thank you for sharing that. Well, Kim, this has been such a fun conversation for me. I just want to thank you so much for the love of slowdown, even though it wasn't an intentional it wasn't an intentional slowdown, it wasn't a slowdown you got to choose. It sounds like it was
Yeah.
forced upon you. But, what a beautiful thing that came from that experience in your life to then create for the love of to help other people connect and find purpose in where they want to go in their life, even though they might wear all these hats. So I just want to commend you for doing that, for taking that slowdown, even though it wasn't the slowdown you wanted, and then creating something really beautiful from that experience. So,
Well, thank you for what you do on Inspiring Possible. I
yeah,
appreciate you too.
I appreciate that. Well, listeners, I give y'all a takeaway. I know I'm walking with all these takeaways myself, but there is one thing that I wrote down and highlighted exclamation mark in mine because Kim told me to do it, so I did it. Okay, but she said your worth is not in doing it all. And so, if there's not one thing you take away from today, I hope you remember you ain't got to do it all. It's okay to ask for help. And why don't you just carve yourself a little bit of time to reflect? And then if you need somebody to help you do that, reach out. You got some resources here. So until next time. That's all for today on Inspiring Possible. If you found a little inspiration today, please go on over to iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen to leave us a comment and rate us. Also, make sure and link up with me at inspiringpossible.com to get the free Dream It, Write It, Do It workbook. And don't forget to follow us on social media and share this with anyone who needs to be inspired. Remember, if you can believe it, it's possible.